Blood from the body enters the heart through the superior and inferior vena cava. Blood travels from the right atrium into the right ventricle. Blood leaves the right ventricle, traveling up to the pulmonary trunk. Blood travels from the pulmonary trunk and bisects into the left and right pulmonary arteries, heading towards the lungs to be oxygenated. Oxygenated blood travels back to the heart through the pulmonary veins. Oxygenated blood travels from the left atrium down to the left ventricle and then up to the ascending aorta. From the ascending aorta, blood then passes through the aortic arch. From the aortic arch, blood then travels to the brachiocephalic trunk. Here we have the left and right subclavian arteries. Here we have the left and right common carotid arteries. Here we have the left and right vertebral arteries. Here we have the left and right thyrocervical trunks. And here we have the left and right costal cervical trunk. Here we have the descending aorta, which provides blood to the inferior region of the body. Here we have the common carotid artery branching off to the external carotid artery and the internal carotid artery. From the external carotid artery, we have the mandibular artery, the superficial temporal artery, and the facial artery. This is the occipital artery. The vertebral arteries converge to form the basal artery. These are the cerebellar arteries. This entire area is known as the Circle of Willis. These are your posterior cerebral arteries, which supply blood to the hindbrain. Here we have our posterior communicating arteries. Here we have the middle cerebral arteries, which supply blood to the midbrain. This is your internal carotid artery. Here is your anterior communicating artery. Here we have the anterior cerebral arteries, which supply blood to the forebrain. The superior sagittal sinus is responsible for most of the drainage from the superior portion of the brain. The inferior sagittal sinus is responsible for drainage of blood from the internal brain. Here we have the straight sinus. Your superior, inferior, and straight sinuses all drain into what is known as the confluence of sinuses, which empty into your transverse sinus, which travels to your sigmoid sinus. All of these sinuses ultimately drain into your internal jugular vein. Here we have the occipital vein. Here we have the superficial temporal vein. And here we have the facial vein. And here we have the superior thyroid vein. These veins all ultimately drain into the external jugular vein. Here we have another view of the internal jugular vein. Here we have another view of the external jugular vein. The internal and external jugular veins drain into the right and left subclavian veins. This is your brachiocephalic vein. Finally, the brachiocephalic vein drains into the superior vena cava. Blood enters the heart via the inferior and superior vena cava, thus starting the process again.
Narration by Andy Higgins. Credits narration by Michael Niklich. Video and audio editing by Michael Niklich. Special thanks to Lights Out Entertainment for loaning audio and video equipment. Fair Use Doctrine Section 107 applies to this video, as it is for educational purposes. Any copyrighted material, images, or video contained herein is the property of the respected creators of such said items.